Hello and welcome to the Fresh Air Sci-Fi Show. I'm Joe.
And I'm Dave.
And tonight we are doing another one of our article readings. Interestingly, it's come around at a time that suddenly this topic has been in quite a few debate groups recently as well. Now, it's going to be about knowledge and information and, you know, the polysemous nature of the word know. But before we do that, we actually had a question from Three Rusty Nails, which I'm just going to read out. So it's basically a couple of different questions. I'll shorten what was said, but one of them was sort of what comes first, knowledge or belief? And the other was, can you choose your belief? So the way I'd say it is we first need to unpack what a belief is. So there's a few different definitions of belief. They all say exactly the same thing in different ways, though. So it's something you accept as true, something you think most likely or probable, a positive attitude towards a proposition. So when we've discussed propositions before, that's something that's true or false. So if I say, you know, the light switch is on, and you go, yes, the light switch is on, that's your positive attitude towards a proposition. So that's all it is. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're saying it definitely is true, just what you think is true. You're not making a truth claim there, or at least not a definitive one. You're saying, yeah, I think that's about right. It could come in various degrees of certainty. Knowledge is a little bit more of a tricky one because there's a number of different theories of knowledge, but they all essentially define belief as, knowledge as a more rigorous form of belief. The most common one that you'll hear out there on the internet is probably the justified true belief. So in that sense, it's a belief, something accepted as true, that is true, and you have justified it. So your justification can be a number of different things. It could be evidence, it could be reasoning, the rules of logic, verification, a number of different things. Having a good understanding of the topic that you might say that you've got knowledge of. That's another thing. Have I left anything out there, Dave?
No, sorry, you keep cutting in and out. I've just had to reset my audio completely, and I can hear you properly again now.
Oh, that's good.
But from what I could hear, yeah, it sounded all right.
Okay, good. Yeah. I mean, if you're interested on that knowledge part, then we actually have a video in our Fresh Air playlist on, so not Fresh Air Sci-Fi, Fresh Air, on YouTube or on our site. So you can either watch the video or download the PDF and listen to the audio or whatever. And we go into the different theories of knowledge. But essentially, knowledge is a more rigorous form of belief. So from that, what comes first? Well, a belief will come first. Then you might build it up and gain knowledge. Now, that knowledge could inform another belief. In fact, your beliefs could inform other beliefs too. So when you think about it that way, they're all sort of entwined. It's all cognitive processes going on. So in answer to your first question, belief comes first, then knowledge. But knowledge can inform other beliefs. So, the next question you had was, can you choose your belief? Now, the short answer to that is no. You can't choose your belief. So, a belief is something you accept as true, but why do you accept it as true? Because you've been convinced that this thing is true. So, say you read an article about the effects of global warming and a number of different studies, and all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, yeah, global warming is real. You've been convinced by the article. You didn't choose that you were going to believe in that. You can't suddenly go, do you know what? I'm going to believe I fly. It doesn't work that way. You'd have to have something happen that made you believe that you can fly. So you can, however, once you have a belief, only choose to find things that back it up. Or if you want to go down a certain path, you could also choose material about things that you want to believe and only look at one side of the argument. You could almost Pavlovian dog your way into believing something. So from that regard, meh, but would you really call that a choice? You're choosing how you're going to interact with the belief and the information to inform your belief. You're not really choosing, I am going to believe this. I can't suddenly turn around and say, do you know what, tomorrow for the entire day I'm going to believe in God. If you want to ask yourself if you can actually choose to believe something, try that. Try believing in God, or try believing that Spider-Man is actually a real character in the real world that goes around saving people in New York. See if you can. I think you'll find that you can't unless you've got some really powerful hallucinogenics. Yes, Dave is definitely comfortable. Nice to see you, Sixtra. So hopefully, Free Rusty Nails, that has answered your question for you. If you do want any more detail on that, pop us another question in the chat and we will get to it. But other than that, I don't think there is much more that we can say on it. Did you have anything to add?
Nope.
Cool. Okay, I'm glad it made sense to you, Three Rusty Nails. Awesome. So we are going to move on to our... what's it called? Article reading of the night. So I just need to quickly switch the stream to be right back to set the cameras up, and we will be right back. Well, that didn't work well. Oh, there it is.
I just need to reset my Bluetooth again. I don't know what the fuck's going on here. Won't
No
be a
problem.
sec. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I wonder what the fuck Randolph Site is doing on our... I playing a video.
Yeah. Oh, I haven't got it quite right. I thought I'd set everything up. There we go. Right, sorry about that. So apparently there was an audio issue with the video that was coming through as well. Sorry. It was just trying to test out different things. Is it still glitching now that we've gone back to normality? It could just be that my PC has been having a bit of problems the last few weeks. So I do apologise for that. Yeah, it's fine now. Okay, I won't put that be right back mode on. So I'll keep it to the audio or the silly stuff that we did before. Yeah, I won't put a video playlist on again. I was just experimenting with different options, so I do apologise for that. Dave, if you could let me know if anything comes through from the chat as we go through this article.
Yep.
And we shall move on. So as I mentioned before, tonight's article is about knowledge and information and the polysemous uses of the word know. It's come up a lot in debate groups recently, which is odd because we'd actually decided to do this article before it did. So it seems quite useful that this is coming out. Obviously, the article was done back in February, and I do link people to it when they do have this. But this is essentially the article. So knowledge and information. We've covered a number of different articles about how words are funny things and can have multiple meanings. The word know is no different in this regard. As a word by itself or in a phrase, it can be used to describe a number of different things. These are the most common ones: knowledge, information, awareness, and certainty or uncertainty. Therefore, it can be said that you know something, but at the same time do not hold knowledge. This can indeed be confusing. So what is knowledge? There are many theories of knowledge which we have covered in Knowledge and Certainty. With all of these theories of knowledge, it's essentially a firm, rigorous, well-justified belief about something true. Knowledge is a subset of belief. A belief is simply something that you accept as true, think most likely, a positive attitude towards a proposition. I think the bridge will hold my weight is the same as I believe the bridge will hold my weight. You can have many types of belief: unjustified, irrational, irrational, justified, rational, etc. As mentioned, there are many theories of knowledge, but essentially it's a firm, rigorous, well-justified belief about something true. Having a belief doesn't entail knowledge. That is to say, when you believe something, you don't necessarily know it. But holding knowledge entails to belief. That is to say, when you have knowledge, you also have belief. Consider, I know I'm human, but I don't believe I am human. It's ridiculous, right? I mean, what do you believe you are then? But the other way round, I believe I will wake up tomorrow, but I don't know I will wake up tomorrow. That makes sense. So knowledge entails belief because it is a subset or type of belief. It follows that if we understand to have knowledge, we have to have belief. We can also understand if we lack a belief, we are lacking knowledge. However, if I say, I believe I will wake up tomorrow, do you really want me to qualify that with, but I don't claim to know that? It's completely surplus to dialogue, and we shouldn't assume a knowledge claim until someone says, I know X is true. But even then, they might be conflating knowledge with certainty. What is information? So information is simply contextualized data or facts. I can tell you that evolution is a fact, or that the sky is blue, and you can hold this information and repeat it. But if you don't understand the mechanisms of evolution or why the sky appears blue to our eyes, this wouldn't really be knowledge. Consider the square root of 196. The answer is 14. This is true. You now have this information, and you might even believe it to be true, but if you don't understand how square roots work, can you really say that you're holding knowledge? Another example I often see thrown around the internet is how 0.999 recurring equals 1. Some folks might outright reject this, even after seeing various ways it works. Others might say they accept or know the answer, but they still don't believe it. This says they're either holding a contradictory belief, which is quite difficult to maintain, or they don't really accept the answer and they just acknowledge the information and that's what people say the answer is, but can't fully justify it to themselves. So as I've mentioned it, I'll do a brief demonstration. On the left-hand side, we have the algebra version. If x equals 0.999 recurring, 10x is 9.9999 recurring. 10x minus x would then equal 9. 9x equals 9. X equals 1. 0.999 recurring equals 1. And through fractions, we can also see a third is the same as 1 divided by 3. 1 divided by 3 is 0.333 recurring. A third times 3 equals 0.33 recurring times 3. A third times 3 equals 1. 0.333 recurring times 3 is 0.9999 recurring. Therefore, 0.9 recurring is 1. So now that you have this information and the math checks out, you can even ask a math teacher or put it in a calculator and you'll get the same answer. So this information is also true. And as you have the information, you might say that you know that 0.9 recurring equals 1. If you don't understand this fully, you might not believe it, even though you have the information and know what the answer is. Without an understanding, I'm not sure you can fully justify your knowledge. And if you don't believe the answer is actually true and are just aware that it is considered true, then again, I'm not sure you can call this knowledge, or even a belief for that matter. So if you don't believe that 0.99 recurring equals 1, that means you're either uncertain of the answer, or you actually believe the answer is something else. So this too would show that you don't have knowledge. Any questions before I move on to awareness?
Nope, nothing from the chat so far.
Cool. So, awareness. Awareness can be linked to information in the sense that you're aware 0.9 recurring equals 1, or you're aware of the stories in the Bible, but you might not have knowledge as to if they definitely did or did not happen. It can be used in a different way too. It can be linked to an emotional or sensory. Emotionary. Gotta love dyslexia. I know someone is watching me. This could easily be described as an irrational belief, something you just feel with no real reasoning behind it. What you're really saying is, I'm aware of my feelings of being watched, rather than any actual knowledge of being watched. The only thing that could really be considered knowledge here is you knowing what you are feeling. Certainty. Know can also deal with certainty. Whilst epistemic certainty is considered on par with or even above knowledge, when folks are speaking of certainty, they usually mean psychological certainty. When we speak of psychological certainty, we, roughly, are speaking about the strength of a belief. A belief is what we think true, most likely, but we might only be 5% certain, or we could be 90% certain, for example. So mixing psychological certainty and I don't know, when folks say, I don't know, they are usually meaning things like, I'm unsure, or I'm uncertain, I'm unconvinced, I have not made up my mind, I lack confidence. So when you're thinking about the proposition God exists, that's what it's sort of talking about if someone says, well, I don't know. In fact, it can be said that this sort of uncertainty is akin to the term agnostic, known as weak Gnosticism, or the psychological state of being agnostic. This is also known as suspending judgment, not believing X is true or false. With this use, you're lacking belief both ways. There is already a lack of belief, which, as we previously discussed, entails a lack of knowledge. Whilst this lack of certainty would usually entail a lack of knowledge, when used to mean a lack of confidence or similar, it could mean that whilst they did have knowledge of something, it's shaken them up and made them doubt themselves. For example, consider someone who has spent a lot of time studying. They have an exam they have been studying for and have studied so hard they should easily ace the test. On the day of the test, through pressure, worry, stress, etc., they've found themselves doubting if they would succeed. They've lost some of their psychological certainty. They ended up getting 100%, which showed that they had epistemic certainty even where the psychological certainty was lacking. Even though this dip in certainty seems to show they had knowledge without belief, they still believed the answers they were putting down were the most likely, even if they didn't have the confidence in them, or more accurately, themselves, that they did before. So they still held belief and knowledge. psychological certainty, and I know. Folks can also use I know to mean I am certain of, rather than I am holding knowledge to. If we are completely honest about some of the conversations we have with theists where they claim to know God exists, when pushed for more information about how they know this, they often talk about how they feel it in their heart. If we think for ourselves, we couldn't conflate. If we think of ourselves, we wouldn't conflate feelings something is true with knowledge, would we? So, being charitable, we would realise the theist also isn't actually speaking of knowledge, even if they believe they have it. Folks might conflate psychological certainty with knowledge too. In other words, they might assume you're saying that you're 100% certain about something means that you have knowledge. Knowledge without belief. Whilst it's usually accepted by most that have studied epistemology that knowledge entails belief, there are some that would argue that it doesn't. One philosopher, Carolyn Black, addressed this in her paper, Knowledge Without Belief. In reading the paper, it was quite apparent that the argument was more of a semantic one than addressing knowledge. For example, there were a few occasions where that seemed to resemble the holding information as knowledge. Just because someone has knowledge, let's say they've spent a lot of time studying evolution and understand all the mechanisms that make it work, and they give you some basic information about change in the allele frequency, but not actually covered off the whole topic, you would have the information of what evolution is. You might disbelieve this, but you would still hold the information. You might pragmatically accept the information with the understanding those who have studied evolution have more knowledge on the subjects than you, but still be uncertain if evolution is true or outright reject it. Evolution is a fact. It is therefore true. The theory of evolution explains the facts, evidence, and process around it. I think any scientist that has studied it at length can fully justify their knowledge in this, but most of us non-scientists can say we accept or believe the scientists' findings. We might say we know evolution is true, but here we're speaking of certainty and holding information rather than something we can fully justify as knowledge, unless we have spent the time reading all the papers, obviously. There were other examples of there were also examples of other definitions of belief being used too. Black quotes Johnson saying, Johnson defines belief to credit from some other person for some other reason than our personal knowledge, which says that S believe P entails S does not personally know P, but he defines credit to believe. In this, Black argues using this definition of belief is not compatible with knowledge. I would argue that Johnson is discussing a specific kind of belief. The belief is something still accepted as true, but his qualifier is that we don't have knowledge of the fact. This is fine. As I discussed, we can hold a belief without knowledge. It might, at this stage, be an unjustified belief, or it could be justified, but we just don't know if it is true or not. It seems Black is trying to argue that when we have knowledge, the belief disappears. That type of belief, for sure, but a belief is simply something accepted as true. So belief in total does not disappear. So like how someone today describes a belief as something accepted without evidence, that isn't exactly what a belief is, but it could be a type of belief. The only part of that that actually describes a belief is something accepted. Black goes on to make what I would consider a glaring mistake in discourse, one that I see many folks on the internet making today. The clearest case in which knowledge positively excludes belief are ones like the following. 1. I say that my books are in my office, and you ask, do you believe that books are in your office? I say, no, I know that my books are in my office. The problem there is saying no, because if you don't believe your books are in your office, it means that you do not accept that your books are in your office. Ergo, you believe they are anywhere but your office. It doesn't exclude belief, it entails belief. You don't not believe when you know, it just becomes unnecessary to state you believe when you know, as in have knowledge, because knowledge entails belief. It being excluded from dialogue doesn't mean it's excluded from our mental state. Just to reiterate, a discursive exclusion is not the same as a mental exclusion. Black spends a page or so going over how if she were to say, I know P, I would not say, I believe P. And again, taking discursive exclusion to be the same as mental exclusion. You would not say it because it's unnecessary to say it. Black also brings up an example like the exam student I mentioned before. If I were a Greek teacher and an unconfident student told me he did not believe he knew the Greek alphabet, but he recited it perfectly in an exam, I would say that he knew it despite his claim. See, here we're speaking of different uses of know. She's, as in Black, even qualified it with unconfident. The student doubted his knowledge due to pressure, but still believed the answers enough to present them. The student had epistemic certainty, but the psychological certainty wavered due to pressure and confidence. I'd argue that the pressure and self-doubt created a contradictory belief that made them doubt they had the knowledge, but once in the zone, their accuracy showed they did indeed have knowledge. An argument could also be made for the person not having knowledge at all and just information. They doubted they could remember the information. In this case, the Greek alphabet. After all, much of schooling, at least at a younger age, is about recycling information rather than actually learning and understanding the topic. You are often taught answers to questions without the understanding behind why that is the answer. That doesn't matter to a school. They need you to pass an exam and get a good grade. This is part of the reason why I actually separate information and knowledge. Knowing the information and having knowledge of a topic can be quite different things. In a discussion, someone was trying to tell me they know something, but they still disbelieve it. It was the example I gave above with the proposition 0.9 recurring equals 1. And the interesting thing there was I'd written this article and they then started talking about this. And so before I published it, I added it in. They said that they know it is epistemically certain, but they disbelieve it. They also argued for things scientists having knowledge of, even though he hadn't studied being a form of collective knowledge. Again, I feel this is a semantic issue of holding information and considering that you know the information to be the same as having knowledge of a topic. He argued that something or someone having epistemic certainty made it knowledge, but he disbelieved the proposition. This would tell me that even though the answer is epistemically certain, he didn't have epistemic certainty himself. He was aware that it is considered epistemically certain and pragmatically might even say the proposition is true, yet he himself did not hold epistemic certainty or knowledge.
Before you continue,
yeah,
I had a few comments coming from the chat.
Okay.
Bearded Heretic says, words are so confusing. I agree.
Yeah.
3 Rusty Nails says, if science proves it, how can it be denied?
Well, speak to any creationists out there. People deny shit all the time.
Yeah, it can easily be denied, but that's not to say that denial is rational.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very good point. I mean, there is if there's enough evidence to support believing the science and you disbelieve it, you're holding an irrational position there. So that's why the YEC position is an irrational position, especially once they've actually spent some time and been subjected to the science. I did make a comment a little while ago that if you were a YEC in a commune and the only books you had were Bibles and all you had was religious leaders, you could have a rational belief that no access to internet or anything like that, but you could have a rational belief that the world is only 6,000 years. But if you then leave the commune and you learn a bit of science, all of a sudden there's all this evidence against your position that you weren't aware of before. Your position is now unjustified and false.
Yeah. Okay, and Philip, who I want to say congratulations to now that we're live on air.
Yes, I forgot about that. I meant to say that at the start. Well done, mate. Very good job.
Yeah, awesome. He says, I think Gettier problems are worth getting into when talking about knowledge.
I think they definitely are. Dave, if you would like to actually cover off some of them, we can.
Okay, so a Gettier problem is basically when you have a belief that is true and you have justifications for believing it, but it doesn't actually entail knowledge. So you might say something like, I know that Joe is either streaming on Tuesday or he's in Romania. You might have justifications for believing that you're going to stream on Tuesday. But say you end up in Romania. They don't know that you're going to be in Romania. They're just taking a guess. But they have this argument, and that sort of gives them justification. Well, it's either this or that. So it's true, and their justification is this argument. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they have knowledge. They've just kind of gotten a bit lucky.
Yep. There's a few more as well, aren't there? I mean, I think we'll come to it at the end. I'll just read out the conclusion, and if you want, we can cover off a couple of Gettier problems. Are there any more messages before we continue?
Yep, quite a few.
Oh, okay. Are they
okay.
Tell that wanker to shut up?
No, that's when they speak to me. Okay, Three Rusty Nail says that would mean certainty. Is absolute certainty possible? That would mean certainty is an absolute.
So psychological certainty is a sliding scale. I think epistemic certainty is binary. It's an absolute, isn't it? You either have it or you don't. So that's where they differ. I could be 100% psychologically certain of something, but suddenly realize I was wrong and lose that certainty, and in fact maybe make another belief. So psychological certainty is tied to a belief, and it's talking about the strength of belief. Epistemic certainty is when something definitely is the case, it's true. So if we're talking about base 10 math, 1 + 1 = 2. I mean, there you go. That is a form of epistemic certainty there. So I'd say, yeah, you're sort of right that a type of certainty is an absolute, as in you do or you don't. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, that sounds about right to me. I mean, you can have absolute certainty in anything, but just because you have absolute certainty doesn't mean you're actually correct.
Indeed.
Like, you can be absolutely certain that your parents are such and such, and then when you reach 60, they die and you find out that you were actually adopted. So absolute certainty is possible depending on the angle that you're coming at it from. Yeah. If you're saying, can we be absolutely certain that something is correct and be correct at the same time, then yeah, I would say so. You could be absolutely certain that your name is such and such, because that's what you've been called since you were a kid. When you get older and it turns out that you were adopted and your name is actually such and such, well, that's not actually correct because your name is what you go by.
Yeah. So
whatever you're going by is your name, and you can have absolute certainty that that's your name.
Yeah. And there are some people who take an almost ridiculous stance on it, in the sense that I can say I'm absolutely certain that I'm having a sip of water. And they could turn around and go, well, what if you're in a simulated universe and you're not actually, it's just data, you're not actually doing anything at all. In that sense, you know, the only thing that you could really have absolute certainty about is the fact that you're thinking. You know, that's the only thing you could really ever have absolute certainty about. But I tend to be a little bit more pragmatic, and I go, well, even if it was a simulated universe, within this simulated universe, I am absolutely certain I'm drinking water. It doesn't matter if it's actually just data. In the parameters of my life, my experience, I'm absolutely certain.
Yeah, the qualifiers, they might alter things at the base level, but they just add contextual particularism to the statement that you're making. But the more general statement that you're making is embedded in whatever context it's being mentioned in. And it's funny you mention that, because Bearded Heretic says next, you might be a brain in a vat.
Yes.
And he
nice
loves
to see you there, dude. Sorry?
He loves Sci-10, because that's one of his famous arguments. His church doesn't love him at the moment.
No. Yeah, they had a bit more of a story about it. It was a vulnerable lady, apparently, wasn't it?
I'm not sure. I didn't pay attention, to be honest. Yeah. I just saw it appear everywhere in my Twitter feed that he'd been booted from his church.
Yeah. Apparently he took advantage of a vulnerable lady.
Yeah. Okay. That sounds about right for somebody that argues such piety.
Yeah. See, I thought it was actually going to be a closet case, and that's why. But there you go.
Yeah, you can never tell, but when they're that outspoken and that sort of performative about their belief, usually I reckon they're hiding something behind it. Okay, Philip says next, unless you're a lacktheist, then lacking a belief in evolution is by default rational. And then he says thank you to us.
Oh, wicked.
Or congratulations, yeah. Leon says, dear Lord, I will never forget that conversation.
Which one?
You mean the Sci-10 conversation? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know. Unless it was, I don't know. We've had a few conversations about knowledge and stuff. There were a few on Twitter, so it was probably one of those as well.
Yeah. And Bearded Heretic then says, technically speaking, we're all brains in a bone vat.
This is true.
And Opie's just come back, so hey, Opie.
Hey, Opie, how you doing? Nice to have you back. What did you buy? You gonna cook me a steak? I hope so.
Okay. And now he's got a question for you.
Oh no.
Yeah, and he even finishes it with So, do we come to knowledge from solely our reasoning or from our solely sense experience? In other words, is knowledge rational or empiricist?
Both. I think that with certain things like that, the way we do experience the world and things like that can be part of our justification for our knowledge. So realistically, there are some things that we can hold knowledge of that don't need rigorous justification. If you're trying to consider something extreme like a god existing, or understanding the entire process of evolution or anything like that, to actually hold that knowledge, you need to rigorously justify it. But realistically speaking, I would say I hold knowledge that I'm drinking water right now, and this is largely because I know what water is. I poured the water myself, and I can taste the water, and etc. So it's a combination there. There's the experience going on, plus my understanding of what water is and what a glass is, and being able to feel it. So, yeah, that's the way I perceive it anyway.
Okay, a few more have come through, but we do the conclusion first and then get to them.
Let's do the conclusion. You're right. Conclusion. If you conflate holding information with having knowledge, or being aware of other people's knowledge as knowledge, then arguably, yes, you can have knowledge you don't believe. I would say this is a semantic game that has moved the goalpost at this point. What you have knowledge of is the information stored in your brain rather than actual knowledge of the topic the information represents. With your knowledge of information in your brain, it would be quite irrational to say you believe that information is not in your brain. So again, we have knowledge entailing belief. Ultimately, it does come down to semantics. If you separate the different uses of know into knowledge, information, awareness, and certainty, as I did above, then knowledge will always entail belief. If you decide to group all of them together as knowledge, then you can make an argument for knowledge without belief. But in doing so, you broaden the definition of knowledge to one where it becomes almost meaningless. As you know, I prefer concise, specific, accurate language, which is why I'm not a fan of the broader definitions of atheism. So it follows I would feel the same about knowledge too. In summary, there's a summary after the conclusion.
It's all good.
We can discursively say we know something without meaning we hold knowledge. With knowing and know being used in different ways, we can see how we can't know something without believing it, and I can understand how folks mistake this type of know for knowledge. It's quite clear that if a seemingly simple word like know can cause this much confusion, with the various uses fitting so seamlessly into conversation, then it's no wonder some of our other words cause even more folks to talk past each other. This is another reason why I do encourage normative definitions from the field of study you might be referring to. If you are discussing science, there is a specific definition used for theory or evolution, for example. If you insist on a colloquial definition, even if it's a popular one, there's still a chance of talking past people. The same can be said for any topic. If you're discussing religion, speak to or read papers of a theologian or someone active in or studying philosophy of religion. If you're discussing knowledge and beliefs, look into epistemology and epistemologists. If you're discussing morality, look a touch further than moral subjectivism and actually delve deep into the ethical theories and papers. When you read conflicting things, which can happen, especially when someone is trying to make a name for themselves in a particular field, it can come down to peer review or how you reason through the problem. Hopefully, as rationally as possible, using the rules of logic where applicable. For more information on how to reason through propositions using the rules of logic, check either one of those two articles. And that's it.
There we go. That was a nice short article.
Sorry, did I go on for too long?
No, that would be reading one of my articles.
Let me switch everything back. Let me quickly put it into this one. And we're back in the room. I think we are anyway.
Hang on, I'm still waiting for the pie to change, so...
That's all right.
It's about 10 or 15 seconds behind.
I see. Right. So, Opie, I hope that answered your question well enough. Okay, so Leon was having a conversation with Philip where a Lacteus told him that suspending judgment is always rational, even to suspend judgment on believing the Earth being round. That's ridiculous. I mean, that's what Russell's Teapot's actually about, is in that situation, it's not actually reasonable to suspend judgment in that. And yeah, so it's not really reasonable to suspend judgment in the Earth being round. Or let's think about this. If someone said Santa Claus exists, okay, or is it true that Santa Claus exists? And then I'm going to go, I don't know, I suspend judgment in that. It's a mythological creature, a person, should I say. I think, realistically speaking, it's irrational to suspend judgment there. Depends how good your justification is. I mean, maybe you actually can justify it, but simply, well, I suspend judgment. I lack belief. It doesn't automatically make your position rational. What was his reasoning? Oh God, Randolph was in that conversation, was he? Or was Randolph the lactheist?
That actually wouldn't surprise me. No. I've got something to say about Randolph afterwards, though, but we'll just finish this off.
Well, we're pretty much at the end of it. Bearded Heretic says, bring back Lamarckian evolution. And Opie says, Lamarckian evolution is actually useless. Useful in Evo Devo.
I don't know what Evo Devo is.
I know it from a song.
I know With It from Devo. It wasn't Randolph that said it, but he was in the conversation.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, I suppose you need to educate us on that one. Maybe not whilst we're on the stream right now, but you can maybe another one inform us of that. Or I suppose I could go away and look it up myself. But you know,
after the stream.
Sorry,
after the stream.
Yeah, exactly. Evolutionary development as the organism grows up. Well, there you go. It's a lot more simple than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
There you go. Thank you for that, though.
Nice.
Yeah. So, were there any more questions or thoughts or anything like that on the article, or did you have anything you wanted to add to it?
No. I mean, there is a discussion that could be had about whether having information that is knowledge could be considered having knowledge, those kind of conversations. Yeah. But that's a whole different kind of conversation than whether, because the people who had that information and gave it to you, for them to have knowledge, or the original people that created the knowledge, they would still have to believe it was true. So there would still be some form of belief involved in making it knowledge. It's just that you have the information and know the information.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it's sort of what I alluded to at the end about it being more of a semantic difference and about the way you're perceiving. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, everything is semantics.
Yeah.
Especially when you're discussing language. It's all semantics.
Yeah. Maybe one day we'll actually, get everybody on the same page, but I doubt it, because I think as we evolve as a species, or at least, endure the world as it is, we seem to make things more and more confusing, changing definitions and things like that, and going for overly broad language.
Yeah. The only way to get everybody on the same page is to kill everyone but you.
I don't know. I reckon I could probably keep a couple of people alive for food.
Yeah. But then everybody wouldn't be on the same page, because I'm pretty sure they wouldn't want to be eaten. And you would want to eat them.
They don't have to be conscious.
Okay, that's an excellent
point. There's a question from 3 Rusty Nails. It says, does suspending judgment create a situation for phenomenology? Do you have to suspend judgment to require SFM essence or knowledge? Yeah, I don't know what... Oh, SFM is not a word. Okay, I was going to say, I don't know what SFM is, but I'm glad you've come back. Some, was it maybe supposed to be some? I don't really know much about phenomenology. That's what Aaron Ra does a lot of, doesn't it? That question's probably better answered by Opie.
Phenomenology here is more, I'm guessing he's speaking something like Sartrean.
Oh, okay. As in, like, phenomenological.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Leon, nice to have you here. Have yourself a good one.
See you
We'll
later,
catch you
Leon.
next Tuesday. My misunderstanding
Yeah, I'm
there.
guessing he means phenomenology as in something
I
like Sartrean or
Yes, he says Sartrean. What am I thinking of then? I'm thinking phylogeny, aren't I? Yes, I'm thinking phylogeny.
chronology.
No, phylogeny is what
That's the
I.
word.
Yeah. So that's the relationships of species. It's an evolution thing. That's really bastardized description. I'm sorry. My head's in a philosophy groove, and I thought you were asking a science question, and you weren't even asking a science question, and my brain just did not work. So,
I can
Dave,
relate.
does it does it create a situation?
I'm not really sure because I'm not sure why it would. I'm not sure. There's not enough detail in the question to actually understand what he means. Like, um, phenomenology is just the idea that we kind of see things through our experiences. So a gambler might see a six-sided cube as a dice and an ability to make money. Um, a religious person might look around and see all the trees and think that there's a god because it's based on his previous experiences. I'm not really sure. There's a million ways to use phenomenology,
Yeah.
even Sartrean phenomenology.
All right. Well, we'll have to say that we don't know for that one. Sorry. If you want to provide more context to your question, then maybe. Phenomenology as an atheistic position. To understand canoeing, I have to go canoeing.
Yeah, like I say, it's based on
Yeah.
experiences and how you see the world through those experiences.
So technically, you'd, um, in that sense, you would almost be automatically suspending judgment on the experience until you experience it. You don't know until you've experienced.
Yeah.
So, but not exactly. Yeah.
Uh, I'm not sure it really makes any difference in the kind of context that it's being set.
Yeah. But there you go. That's as close to an answer that you're going to get on that one tonight. Sorry. Right. Well, Dave, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah. Apparently, although this isn't to do with the article, this weekend there will be a debate between Randolph and somebody else, and I can't remember who it is. It's a modern day debate, and it's Randolph arguing that atheism is the rational conclusion to skepticism.
Right.
Now, there's a few things I can see here. I know exactly how he's going to argue it, that it is rational to lack belief in something if there's not enough evidence, blah, 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 blah. But there's a couple of things that are going to be a problem here. The first is that he argues that babies are atheist.
Yep.
So atheism isn't necessarily the rational conclusion to skepticism. It's just a property based off, you know, a lack of some other positive property.
Yeah, I mean, he
So
even agreed with Ra's rocks are atheists, so
yeah,
again, is made it even harder to justify his own position.
exactly. And Randolph also says it's not a position. So how can it be the rational conclusion of anything? For something to be the rational conclusion of something, it has to be a position.
Yep.
Or a conclusion, you know. Yeah. And the another problem is, can you be skeptical of the non-existence of God? Can you be skeptical that the universe doesn't contain a God?
Yeah.
There must be a God. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can be skeptical about any position, and that skepticism might lead you to the conclusion that God exists.
Yep.
So it's not necessarily the rational conclusion of skepticism that there is no God.
Yeah. And I mean, it even depends on what kind of skepticism he's applying. And knowing Randolph, it's probably just doubt rather than
just doubt.
Yeah, rather than actually anything. So we actually had a question from Bearded Heretic, who's Randolph. We'd actually reviewed his site. He's the president of the Canadian Atheists, or as I call them, the Canadian Atheist Club, because it's spelled cack that way. So we did a stream called "It's a Load of Cack," and we basically took down his article. I didn't realize it was his article originally. I just knew he linked to it. Found out that he was the president of the Canadian Atheist Club. On the Canadian Atheist Club, he links to the website, official definition of atheism. You click on it, it actually tells you that it's his site as well. And we basically went through it, and he absolutely awful in every way, shape, or form. He kept switching things up, misquoting history, even claimed that there were Christians 500 years before Christ was born.
Hello?
Can you not hear me? Are you gone again? How weird. Dave's having audio troubles tonight. So yes, this
yes, I missed the entirety.
It's okay. I was just explaining who Randolph was and what we did with his site, and then I just said he even said that there were Christians 500 years before Christ was born.
Yeah, he did, and then somebody tried to defend that.
Yeah, no. Someone was saying, if I'm being really charitable, could we regard these people if we expand the definition of Christian? And I said, but how can you be a Christian without Christ? And I go, well, you can't really, but I'm just trying to think of a way he could have thought that. So I don't think he was defending Randolph there. I think he was trying to be more charitable than we were being.
There's no level of charity that supports that.
So yeah, on that note, he basically unfortunately, both him and Ra argue from an ideological place for the definition of atheism, which is why rocks are atheists, babies are atheists. They need numbers for their American atheists and Canadian atheists and so on and so forth. So that is why they go for the lack of belief definition. And they'll assert that it's the more logical, and then you go, okay, can you explain the logic to me? It just is. It makes sense because that's blah-de-blah. And you're like, okay, just asserting that it's more logical without actually providing any information of how it's more logical isn't great, really. I mean, look, people are free to use whatever definition they like. I prefer concise definitions. He doesn't, and he's arguing ideologically, and that's the problem. He'll say all other definitions are wrong, only his lack of belief definition is right, and therefore anything that is not a theist, not just anything that is not a theist, is an atheist. So yeah, it's one of those incredibly frustrating conversations, and something that I really can't be bothered to get into too much anymore. I'm more willing to talk to someone who's a lacktheist that at least accepts that only humans can be an atheist, because they're at least being a little bit more reasonable with that lack of belief, and they might be able to understand. But yeah. Yeah. So hopefully that answered your question of who Randolph is. um, don't worry, your article was quite an enjoyable read anyway. You can always edit it if you want. But it was a good read, dude. Actually, speaking of that, we're going to have Bearded Heretic on in a couple of weeks' time to discuss consciousness and morality from a psychological perspective. So make sure you tune in for that one. I'm very much looking forward to it. Next Tuesday, though, we are having our end of month free for all AMA. So that is it's the first one that we're doing apart from the one that we did on my birthday where I just got drunk and chatted shit and played music and stuff like that. This one will actually be a sci-fi stream. So we've sent out a number of Discord links to people if they want to join in, and we'll send out a few more. So when I post the schedule, I'll put a limited link in there for up to 10 people, 10 more people to join us. I know that not all of you are going to be available to join us next Tuesday, especially as we're probably starting at 8 next Tuesday. That's 3 p.m. Eastern. So I know it's early for a lot of you. But still, you know, whenever you can, jump in, jump out, ask a question, say something stupid, do a little dance. Don't care. It's not a serious stream next Tuesday. And we haven't got anything planned for next Thursday yet. So you'll have to keep your eye on YouTube for that one.
Send an invite to Chris, man.
Do you want me to?
No. No.
I mean, that was incredibly painful conversation as well. I mean, from what I said, the context there was me talking about political philosophy.
Yeah. And not just that, how can we invite him to a YouTube live stream if we're not even on YouTube at the time?
No, exactly. I mean, that, and I said that to him a number of times. I said we were only doing the podcasts. The word said live stream, but that's because it was a live conversation with us. But we weren't on YouTube at the time. We weren't having the conversation. So this is just someone that, in that article reading that we did of Randolph's site, was Randolph is more irrational than the Duke and Chris Mann combined. So he found it and started ranting.
Who searches their own name on the internet?
Sorry?
Who does searches for their own name on the internet and YouTube?
Well,
especially when you're not like a celebrity.
No, exactly.
I mean, Ricky Gervais does it, but again, you know, he's not exactly a celebrity.
I've searched for Answers in Reason before because I was interested in if anyone had referenced us. So I have done that, but I don't spend my time going through videos and things like that.
No.
Yeah. Free Rusty Nail says we need to read more Sartre so he can ask questions on what he's saying.
Yeah, I have to admit, I've not read a lot of Sartre.
Hasn't Martin?
I think he's read some, yeah.
Yeah, maybe we'll get him on if he's got enough
read
knowledge.
Some stuff, but it's not anything that came up during my studies. So we were more Nietzsche and Foucault and people like that.
Do you think once you've finished your computer science degree and eventually get round to your PhD in philosophy, if you still decide to do it, there'll be more Sartre in that?
I'll probably read him before then, because to get a PhD, you need to have quite a good grounding in pretty much everything. So
fair.
I do want to read Being and Nothing. So
okay, so it'll happen, but when there's time. Dave has started recently his next course, so he's doing a computer science degree. So most of his reading and things like that is focused on studying for that. And I'm just like busy with life. I have a work and family and all of that. So I love these streams. Sorry,
I've got this next to the bed, which I read before bed.
Nice. Is it good? Actually, is it worth buying?
Brilliant. Yeah, brilliant.
Awesome. Have I read Darren Brown's book? No, but I have done the NLP practitioner course, which is basically the lower level of what Darren Brown based his stuff on. So I don't know if you know much about NLP, but I figure in your line of work it might be something that you use, or like my mate Ben, who's a psychotherapist, he absolutely hates it. He doesn't think that it should be used at all. I find it useful, but I have to consciously make sure I'm using it. His happiness one, called Happy, is what Bearded Heretic is saying. No, I have not read it at all. I haven't read any of Darren Brown's books, to be fair. So I didn't need to ask which one, but I'm glad Philip did.
The only Happy I've read is the graphic novel that the TV show is based off.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Apparently it's about Stoicism. So Martin might like that one. Don't know if he's read it. He quite likes his Stoicism, doesn't he?
Yeah. If you want a good source on Stoicism, like an active source at the moment, there's oh God, what's his name? Maglima Passimo. Hang on.
I'm gonna have to start singing in a minute, Dave. Well, whilst you're finding that, I think that it's fair to say that other than that, unless there's any more questions or anything like that coming in, we're pretty much done for the night, so we're getting ready to sign off. Did you find who it was, Dave?
No.
Okay.
I'll have to look it up at another time, but he's really good. It's like Maglimo Pessimo or something like that. My brain's kind of broken this evening, so.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think that's it for this week. Hopefully you all are. Yeah, we'll tweet you. When Dave remembers what it's called, he'll send you a tweet. No worries. But yes, as I said, next Tuesday is our free for all AMA. Just anyone who's on our Discord server or picks up the link within the next couple of days and joins our Discord server can just come on and have a chat. It's just a chat about anything or everything. There's no direction or anything like that. It's just going to be whatever. So I'll probably turn on the decks, have a bit of a mix until a couple of people have joined, and then we'll go from there. And other than that, as I said, the Tuesday after, we're having a conversation with Bearded Heretic about morality and consciousness from a psychological perspective. That's it for me tonight, and that's it for Dave too. You've been watching the Fresh Air Sci-Fi show. Have yourself a good night.
Good night, all. Take it easy.
So, as I mentioned, we usually stream on Tuesdays and Thursdays about 8 p.m. GMT. Sometimes it's a little bit later, depending on Dave's coursework. And we occasionally do the odd stream elsewhere when we're available. Have yourselves a good night.